Good morning and welcome to today's class, or evening, whatever time it is where you are. Today's class, we're going to be painting this gorgeous little giraffe. He comes in again.
He's lovely.
She's spelled her name wrong. Anyway. Morning, Lynn.
Right, I'm on my iPad now.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to get my stuff from the study.
She's gone. Okay. The joys of technology. Anyway, welcome to today's class. We're painting this little giraffe face today. So, and just so you know, I have never painted this either. So we're all in this together and we'll bumble through and figure it out. So I'm going to switch my screen over to the iPad that looks down onto my desk. And that way you'll be able to see what I'm doing while I'm talking. And if you would like the recording after the show, then you're welcome to that as well. Just let me know. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit closer. Closer. There we go. And adjust the focus so that it's nice and focused and doesn't wiggle around too much. I will just mute everyone if that's okay, but please do speak up. If you have a question, if you want me to slow down, if I'm going too fast or anything at all, just press your unmute button as we go through the class and stop me and ask a question, because I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. All right, so we're going to start today with doing a charcoal drawing, which is the way all my classes go. And we're going to do this guy in just charcoal. The reason for that is so that we can look at the different tones within the picture and get familiar with drawing it in using the grid. So I've put the grid onto the color version and we'll refer back to that as we draw in the shapes and outlines of this guy. And then we'll be looking at the black and white version to study the tone and the lights and the shadows. So I'm excited about this one because it's got some lovely light in it. When I'm looking for reference pictures, I always look for things that have some sort of light and dark in them. Otherwise, they're a bit monotone and a bit boring. So I know it doesn't look that light, but there's a beautiful light spot here on the top of the eyebrow and on that other ear on the other side and on the eye there. And there's a few light spots on the nose. So we can see that the light is probably coming from above, I would say. And so we're going to capture that light today and really make that pop. And I think that's what makes artworks interesting, is when you've got a lovely contrast of light and dark. Creates drama, creates interest, and it just gets your attention. So that's what I always look for whenever I'm looking for reference photos. The lights and the darks, they're very important. So grab yourself some drawing paper or an art diary like I have here. We're working in portrait shape today, so we're narrow across the top and wider at the sides. So that's this way around with your page. And we're going to use charcoal for this part of the class. So what I like to do is draw up a thumbnail shape of the page inside my page. You can use your whole page if you want to, but I prefer just to draw it up something like that inside my page and just work within that parameter there. It's just a bit cleaner and easier, and we're just doing a very quick little sketch, so it's just a practice run. Don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on doing something large. Once you've got that drawn in, put your grid mark in. So just find your halfway lines, either across and down, not either, but both across and down. Just turn my phone noise off. Lovely. And now we've got our grid line. So the grid line helps us to draw up the shape. And the way we do that is by focusing on each section at a time. So what that does is it changes the way your brain looks at the picture. So you no longer see a giraffe with ears and eyes and things. When we break it into pieces, you just see shapes. And negative space is a really great way to find the shapes on something. So look for that. If you can't sort of get the right shape around the top of something or the eye or whatever it is, look at the negative space around it, and that will often be a really good way to find the shapes. So in this instance, the negative space is all the space around the giraffe. And so we can look at that shape there and just see where that goes around the outside of it. So it's just a lovely way to be able to determine where to put your lines and your marks. So let's have a look at this. We're going to start in the top left corner. That's where I like to begin each of my drawings. And we're going to look at where the line intersects with the giraffe. So I would say that this intersects at about the halfway mark. So if you put a little mark at the halfway mark on your paper, and then it comes down, so we can kind of start drawing from there. We do a little loop down and just do it loose. Hold your charcoal loose in your hand, so not tight as if you're writing with a pen. I like to hold it on the end so it feels quite loose and free and light. And we're just going to lightly draw in this shape. So I'm coming up, you can see the height of these thingamajigs at the top of the head. It's about a quarter of the way down inside this section here. So I can say, well, it's about a quarter, probably a little bit more actually. But anyway, say about there. So it needs to come up to about that height there. The other one on the other side is higher, so take note of that. And then we just draw the shape down, and then we find where the ear intersects on the line down here. So you can see over here, it's probably a bit less than a quarter. So something like a fifth or a sixth into the line about there. So you can find that section on your grid mark. And then this is a complicated little area here. If you look at the outside shape and not necessarily the shape of the head, so it's no longer a head, it's just a shape. You can come down to about halfway, dip in a bit, then across, and then down and intersect off. So that's the kind of shape that we want to create on the side of the head there. Now, if I have just gone in a little bit too low there, so I'll come back out and angle that down. Notice that sharp angle on the ear that comes across there. So I should have started in a bit earlier than that. So that's just a great way to see the shape around the outside of your thing and draw what you see there. So I think that'll do for that part. If you make a mistake, grab your kneadable eraser, which do I have one handy? Yes. I always have a kneadable eraser somewhere. This is just a piece of one. You need to knead it to find a clean edge, and you can use that to rub out some charcoal if you got the line in the wrong spot. Okay, so that's roughly the outline in that section, and that's all we need to do at this stage. Then we can move across into the top right quarter, and we can again look at how this shape goes. And so what we've got here is this antler thing is taller on this side than on that side. So it comes up a little bit higher. The arc comes up and then around and then down. And then we've got this really big ear, which takes up quite a lot of space. So it probably goes almost off the page, not quite, and then under to here and then down there where it joins up just below the eye. So we can find our points on this mark here. So I would say it's about a quarter of the way in, where the eye intersects, or that section where the eye sits, intersects with our line. And then from there, it's very close, isn't it, above that line where we have this little arch like that under what's the ear shape. And then we can draw our ear. So it comes nearly to the edge of the page, beautiful arc down like that and across. So draw your ear in there. And then we can come up, and it's got a lovely sort of curve up to here and then up to the top of the antler. I don't know if this is actually called an antler, but I'll call it that for today. And then down, make sure that's a little bit taller than the other one. and then down and joining up the line there. So that's basically the shape we want to have in that section. And then we can move down to the next part, which is reasonably easy. So we just continue from here all the way down to the corner of our page, which is here. So that's the neckline. Don't worry about the hairs on the neck just yet. We're just putting the outline in for now. So that's the neckline that comes down to the corner like that. And then the only other part we need to put in for this section is over here on the left side of this quarter. So we start at about here. That's where the neck comes back into the page, and it goes off probably just under halfway up. So if that's halfway, it might be about there. So then we can just draw a line to there like that. So that's our neck. Easy peasy. Then we can come up here. We've already got our area here where we join the line and here. So now we've just got to get this shape in, which is the mouth and the rest of the neck and the chin. So we can continue this line up a little way. Then it has a straight line across, and then we do a little curve, and then another curve around like that, and then up and come up to the ear now and just pop that shape in there, and then down like that. So I've gone to round there. So I can take that bit out. And that's basically the outline of our giraffe. So when you break things down into parts or sections, it's a lot easier to draw because you don't look at it as ears and eyes and things. They're just shapes. So it sort of changes the way your brain works. It's probably the more logical side of the brain that we use when we're doing this part, and then we can flip back over to the creative side when we start putting in all the beautiful tones and things. So now we've got that in, let's just talk about eyes and things and where they sit so we can make sure we get them in the right spot. So on this left-hand top quarter, we've got a bit of an eye just here. So you can just darken that section there a little bit to indicate the eye. Like that. And then on the other eye sits inside the top right quarter. And you can see the bottom of the eye nearly touches our halfway mark, and it comes up through here. So this is going to help us get the eye in the right spot. So it's fairly close to the edge of the head. And it's a beautiful big brown eye. And then it's got a lovely eyelid and lashes over the top. So we can draw a shape that's a bit like that, and put the lid there, and we can indicate the dark section for the lashes, and then the round brown section in there. So it's a little bit hard to see because it's not that very big, but basically that's where the eye is going to go, about there. So that's what we need to determine at this point. Then we can work our way around again, so we can stay over in this section and put the little bump in above the eye that sort of comes across, very distinctive giraffe kind of shape, isn't it? That round bump there. And that's where we're going to put a lovely little highlight later on. And then as we move up, we've got other little bumps here. So I'm just going to indicate those with a little bit of a reverse C shape. And you can see on the right side of these bumps is darker, and the light's catching them at the top. So they're casting some shadows, which is fun, and that will make it interesting to paint. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 little bumps there. The last one's up in the darker hair or fur of the giraffe. And then we've got 3 here. This one pokes out slightly at the top, and then that one there, and then the bottom one. So I just want to mark those in and make sure we kind of understand where they sit in relation to the rest of the face. So we'll come back to the bump above the eye, and then we're going to continue over into the top left quarter and put that other humpy bumpy thingy there above the nose. So it's like it's, I don't know what that is, but anyway, a bump there. And the line of that nose comes down here. So just draw that in. Once we've got some of this detail in, then we can start looking at the tones and put some lights and darks in. So that line comes down through there. It's not a very hard line, it's a soft line, but there's a difference in tone there. You can see it in the black and white version. It's a little bit grayer. And then on the left of that, where the left eye is, on our left, it's lighter. So again, we can just play around with this eye, bring that down a little bit lower here so it's separated from the ear. Need to lighten that up a bit there. So we really can't see a lot of detail with this eye. It's sort of off to the side. Got it in profile. Then we have our ear, and we can shade that in a minute. Coming down here, we're going to just look at the nostrils now. So we need to work out where they sit. So we've got one here off to the side, and it's like a triangle shape. Just looking at the dark interior part of the nostril is a little triangular shape there. And then it's got another triangular shape over here. Don't know if I've gone far enough over. Putting that in there and that in there. So the one on the right, our right, is slightly bigger than the one on the left. So it seems everything on the right's a little bit bigger because we've got a better view of the right side of the head. And some of the left side is, because it's on an angle, it appears to be smaller. Okay, and then we've got some light around the outside of the nostril, so it comes down the side like that, a little bit darker. Okay, under there. Under there. So just looking at the tones and the shadows and things. And then we have a little bit of a, I don't know, flap of skin or something that comes down here. Comes like that. On the side of the face. So we're just getting some of these main features or elements into the picture to start with. Then we can come up again on the right side of the nose. We've got a lovely bit of light. So it's not the lightest, but it's a lighter area down the middle there. And then it's sort of in shadow on the right-hand side, a little bit more. So that's a nice thing to note. And also the light above the eye, on the lump above the eye, over on the right, is also a nice little feature because that's glowing. All right, so what we need to do next is get a shorter, fatter bit of charcoal, something that you can hold sort of on its side like this, something you can kind of grip in your fingers. It's a little bit fatter because fat is better, it'll make a wider mark. And now we can start to shade this guy in. So if we look at the black and white version, you can see the eye's quite dark. So I'm just going to darken that right back if I can. Press a little bit harder with your charcoal just to get it nice and dark. There is a very slight shine in there, but we can pop that back in with the eraser if you want to put it in afterwards. And the eyelid is not as dark as the eye, so you can lighten that up or just do a softer touch there with the eyelid. And we've got a bit of an eyelash going on as well. Dabbing with your finger is always a good way to lighten off some charcoal if you want to get it a little bit lighter on your page. And it will depend on what kind of paper you've got too. Okay, so we're lightening up the lid a little bit there. Now, let's have a look at this. Let's start up here on this first antler that we looked at on the right side. I'm going to darken off the top of it. So I'm looking at my black and white version now. I can see at the top of it here is quite dark. Imagine the light coming down from above. So it's coming down from on top of the giraffe. So everything that sticks out is going to catch the light at the top of its thingo, top of itself. So the top of this antler is not bright white, but you can see that it's catching the light because it's lighter than what's below it. And then as we move down, so the right side seems to be a little darker. So I'm just darkening off the right side. And I want to leave some little shadows through here. So look at the right side of the antler and how it's got shadow there. And then all the little bumps are kind of white or lighter. So we're just marking that down through there. And then I want to keep those little bumps a little bit lighter. So if you've smudged them like I have, you can come back with your eraser and take some of that charcoal out just to let it lighten up a little bit. It's basically darker on that side. And then on that far left side, just going to put a bit of charcoal on there. I will have to come back with my eraser and put the whites back in. And that's okay. When we do this with pastel, we'll use light colours to do that. We need to emphasise those little light areas as much as we can. So I've just put some charcoal on there. I'm dabbing it with my finger just to soften it off a little bit. And then I know I can come back with my eraser now, make a little point with it, and then just dab it where I want the lightest parts. So just a little dab. And if it's not looking light enough, you might need to put more charcoal on it. Just got to make sure we get them in the right place. Or near enough. Yeah. So, and then you might want to come back and darken a little bit more. So we're just really focusing on tone and the bottom of the bumps. So see how the bumps look like. Imagine they're a circle. Okay, like that. So the light's coming from above. So that means this top section is light and the bottom part is darker. Okay, so it's got a little shadow at the bottom of the lump. And then that sort of continues on into the rest of the skin. So we've got to kind of make these like a half moon kind of shape through there. And when you're doing this kind of work, you just got to keep trialing things to see what works. You can dab it and soften it off a little bit. Come back with your eraser and lighten off those points a bit so that the light points are more like a half moon shape on the bump. Just lighten those up a little bit. Trying to make them look like they're bumps. That's starting to work. Don't want to spend too much time on that because we'll have to do it all again in colour. So that's sort of what I'm talking about with the tones and getting the light to look like it's coming from above. The other side now, I'm just starting to put some tone in there. I like using these shorter sticks because I can get a wider mark with them. And I've just got it on its side, but I'm tilting it. So I'm using the end of it, but not the tip. So it's a softer sort of mark that it makes. So just darkening through there a little bit. And then on the top of the head down here, it gets a little bit lighter. So we can smush a little bit of charcoal through here. So when you can pop your little stick on its side like that, just wipe it softly on the paper so that you're just getting a little bit on there. You don't want it very dark. And then down through here near that left eye, it's much lighter, isn't it? So the eye itself looks quite dark and there's a little bit of grey around it. But this section in here is really light. So that's catching the light too. So leave that white if you can. or take it out with your eraser if you've put too much down. But just make sure you get that eye in there nice and dark, because that's a really dark spot just through there. Now in the ear, we've got some tones. I'm just going to put some charcoal in there, again using it on its side. Leave the bottom part of the ear where you can see the light undone if you can, so don't put any charcoal there, or take it out with the eraser if you have. And then just look at the shades and tones in that ear. So we've got this little interesting little triangular dark shape through the ear there. And that's sort of telling us that there's texture inside the ear. It's not just a flat piece of skin, it's got bumps and lumps as well. And then we can just shade in where you can see shadow. So the bottom part of that ear is quite light. Probably haven't left quite enough dark in there. Something like that. So that's where the light's catching on that bottom section there. Ruby. Might just jump over to the other ear while we're doing ears. Again, this one has got mostly a mid-tone grey through it, so I'm just going to shade some of that in with my charcoal. Then I can play with it. I can darken and lighten. Push it around with your fingers so you get a nice smooth sort of fill. And then there's that little triangle again, so we can put that in with some more dark. So press a little bit harder. And then down through there. And there's just one little light section on that ear, or two. There's one here, about there, a little bit of light. And there's a tiny bit just in here on the left side of the right ear. Just through there, there's a little bit of light. I've got my pictures up on my other screen so I can see it nice and big. So that helps to see all the detail. Now I'm seeing all these little creases and lines and things through here. And we've got a flap on this ear. It comes down through there like that. And then there's hair, white hair inside there. So that's interesting when you get nice and close to things. So we won't worry too much about all that detail at this stage, but just remember that it's there, because we'll put that in later when we're doing the colour version. So that's the inside of that ear. Just keeping this quite simple for now. There's hairs on the other side as well. All right. So then we're going to come down and we're just going to shade the nose area. So there's a lump on the top of the head here and it's quite dark. And then I'm just going to shade down here through the nose and the side of the face. So same as what we did before, just shading some grey down through there to get that tone happening. You've got to have something on the paper to push around to help create these beautiful greys and lights and darks and things. So just pushing that in with my finger now, smoothing it off like that. And then we can take it out where we need to, but I just need to darken up here a bit more. So really noticing all these different tones and shapes. And noticing also the difference between a lump or a bump and then a shadow that it's casting. So there's all that to consider as well. So the bumps and things have shadows on them, depending on where they are and where the light's hitting it. But they're also casting shadows on the rest of the body, especially this one here. So the big bump on the top of the head is casting this shadow down here beside the eye. So that's good to kind of know or remember. And then the middle of the nose, as it comes down, it's a light grey tone. We've left the left side of that near the left eye light because there's light hitting that. There's also light hitting the nose here. And we can sort of indicate that just by doing a few little darker marks across there. And then you can come back with your eraser or even your finger, it might lighten off enough, just to give a little bit of a shine onto the front of the nose there to indicate the light. And then off to the right of that, it's a bit darker again, isn't it? So it gets darker down through here. I'm pressing harder now with the charcoal just to get darker, coming down through here. And then I'll just pull that down softly with my finger to sort of blend it in a little bit. But there's a definite line or crease here where it's darker on the right and lighter on the left. And that's the bridge of the nose, I think, coming down through there. I'm not very good at knowing what all these parts are called, so I'll just make it up as I go. Sometimes I try to find out and then I can't remember anyway, so it doesn't matter. Can't remember. All right, good. So just looking at the shadows now around the eye. So underneath the eye here is a bit lighter, and then we've got a light area, and then it goes a little bit darker as it comes in from behind the neck there. And then we've got some creases coming down around there like that. So that's helping us to see that the light again is hitting the bottom of the eye and protruding. It makes the eye then look like it's protruding a little bit, which it is. Got all this lovely light above the eye, so it's a really nice light section there. You might need to use your eraser to get some of it back in if you've lost some of it, because it's quite a prominent area right there. And then of course it's got little creases and bumps and things in it. Okay, so we'll move on down to the neck first. So it's pretty much just a mid-tone all the way down through there. There's not a lot of lights and darks. It's all much the same tone all the way through. So just wipe your charcoal over that and then give it a little rub and rub it in. Got some creases down through under the chin there. So you can put a few little marks in like that to indicate the creases in the skin. And then of course we've got our spots, blotches. So you can mark those in as you see fit. Typical, very giraffe-y looking marks, aren't they? I don't know if there's a pattern to this or if it's just sort of random. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm just blobbing some blobs on there. Again, pressing harder with my charcoal, using a fat short piece but on its end, but tilting it a little bit just to get that wider, softer mark. So now it's starting to look very giraffe-y. She, I don't know. Cool, that'll do for that bit. You can see on the splotches on the picture, there's sort of a brown and then a darker brown in the middle of it. So we can play with that with the pastels. Okay, come up through here, bit of dark through there. Something like that. So that'll do. And then we've got the hair, so we can put some hair down through here, just roughly, lightly. This is just a lovely way to rehearse your picture. So when you are doing a painting or looking at doing a painting, it's always a good way to practice it. And that's when you discover that you might need to change things. If it's a composition thing, you might want to move something to the left or the right or whatever. It's just a really nice way to experience the picture before you do it in colour, because finding the tones is very important. You can see there's a bit more light just down through here. Anyway, we'll move on to the nose now. So we've got our neck and eyes and ears and everything in. So we'll come down here and look at the nose. So as we come down, you can see on the nose, inside the nostrils is quite dark, so we've done that part. Then around them is a lighter sort of rim, I guess. And then around the rim is darker again, because that's telling us that it rises out of the skin. So on this bottom right nostril, we've got this lovely dark rim around the edge like that. So that helps to bring it forward and tell us that it's actually protruding out of the skin with the shadows. And then we've got this bit here, mouth, that sort of comes down, it sort of sags down a little bit. So I've got this bit that sort of protrudes out a little bit there around the edge of the mouth. And then as we come down around the bottom of the nose, it's got some cute little hairs there, very fine hairs. You can hardly see them, but there's a few little, like a whisker, just around there like that. You can put those in if you wish. And then looking at the tone again, so you can see there's a darker section down through here and around there, just at the bottom. And then on the left side, there's a lot more light. So this side's catching the light a little bit more than what the right side is. So we can, I'm just going to darken off through here first a little bit, up between the nostrils. Kind of all this skin and stuff there, creases and folds and things. And I'm going to just make that left nostril a bit smaller because the head is slightly on an angle, so we can't see as much of the left nostril as we can of the right. Okay, so when you're looking at something on an angle like that, you've just got to remember that, you know, it's not going to be even, and you've got to be very aware of that and how to make it look like it's, you know, on a slight angle. And then again with your eraser coming in and just removing whatever you need to take out to bring the light back. And then the left side of the mouth is also quite light. And there's a little bit of light just on the right side of the mouth, on the bottom of the nostril area, just here, just there. There's a bit of light catching there. So I've got to put more dark around it, otherwise it won't be light enough. Whenever you want to lighten something up, try adding dark around it and it'll make a massive difference. You'll be surprised. Sometimes you're trying to lighten something and you can't quite get it bright enough, and you keep looking for your lights and your whites and your bright yellows and things. But often, if you put a dark next to it, darken whatever's around it, and that will bring the light back. All right, so I think that might do for now for this part of the class. So it's, as I said, a little study of the tones and looking at, you know, where it's lights and darks and so forth, and working out the direction of the light and where it's coming from, so that then we can start working on getting all the lights to shine, and that gives our image contour. Then once you've got lights and darks in there, it gives it form and contour. So we'll move on next to our colour version. Hope that was helpful. I like to keep my sketches in a little art diary like this, because then they're all in one spot. Put that aside for now. Keep your notes nearby too. If you don't have a reference picture on a screen, then refer to this one here. And I like to prop it up so that it's really easy to see. You don't have to move your head too much to see your picture. So what did I say about paper colour in here? I think I said paper colour would be blue or green. So blue to represent the sky, green to represent foliage, or a neutral grey would also be lovely. That was a bad typo there. Also doesn't have an A, but anyway. So what I picked out was this blue colour. I know it's not sky blue, it's a darker blue, but I thought because the giraffe is in oranges and browns and blue is a complementary color of orange, it might look lovely on a darker blue background. So I thought I'd give that a crack, see how we go. Hopefully it won't be too dark because most of this is fairly light. And if it is a bit dark and it sort of merges off into the background, I'm not going to be too worried about that because it might soften the edges a little bit and have disappearing edges, which is quite nice sometimes. So tape your paper down onto your board. It's handy to have a little board because it just keeps your paper nice and flat. And if you tape it down, then you don't have to hold on to it. It stays in one place, which is very helpful. But any paper color will be fine. Whatever you choose, just make sure it's going to be able to see the giraffe on the paper. This is obviously on white and that works quite well too. So if you have a light colored paper, that'll be okay. Don't stress too much about the paper. If you're very enthusiastic and you want to fill in the background yourself, you can. Make it look like there's some trees there or sky or a bit of both. Might be quite lovely with a bit of foliage behind it. Giraffes are fairly tall, obviously, so maybe some sky would work. So feel free to do that if you want to, but we're not doing the background in this class. We're just going to focus on this guy. But you're welcome to do that if you feel like it. I'm going to put my charcoal aside because I'm working on a darker paper today. I'm going to be using a light coloured pencil. This is actually a white charcoal pencil, brand new too. So I really like drawing with charcoal because it comes off much easier than your pastels do on this gritty paper. So, and because I'm on a dark paper, I need a lighter colour to draw with. If you're on a lighter paper, then by all means use charcoal if you wish. Never use a graphite or lead pencil because it won't come off and it won't cover. So no matter how hard you try, you cannot get pastel to stick over the top of graphite. And it'll always show through. So don't use that. All right. So we're going to rule up our page and do the grid thing again. So find your halfway mark. If you're using the colour fixed paper, then your halfway mark is 11.5, but it's 23 wide. And just lightly draw your line on. Don't press very hard at all because then you'll be able to get it off much easier later on. And then 15 across. So then we've got our grid. You can always use a more detailed grid if you wanted to. So if you wanted to draw up 8 sections or more, you can do that and break this down into even smaller parts, whatever's easiest for you. Okay, we want to try and make things as easy as we can, but you also need to get the drawing right. It's very important to make sure you get your drawing right. So what we'll do is we'll start to draw this up. Then I will put the colours I've chosen on the screen and we'll have a short break and that'll give you time to gather your colours if you haven't done that already. And then we'll get started after a break. So let's spend the next few minutes drawing this up. We've already done it once, so now we can do it again. We can refer back to our grid line. If you want to make sure that you're putting your intersections in exactly the right places, then you can actually measure the picture and you can find your halfway mark on here. So on my picture, this grid line is 7 high. I'm just looking at this quarter here, so that's 7 high. So halfway is 3.5. So it does literally intersect at exactly the halfway mark. So if I grab my ruler and measure here, that's 15. So 7.5 is halfway. Okay, so that's where the top of the giraffe's head intersects with this line. We've worked that out now. You can do the same thing measuring this way. So that's 5 across. So halfway is 2.5. So we know now that halfway is about there. That's about where the eye will sit. So that's another way to work out where to put things. Doesn't even have to be where things intersect. you can kind of go, okay, well, the eye, bottom of the eye sits at halfway. So that's halfway there. This is why gridding is really helpful. You can just draw a light line there and remind yourself later, okay, the eye, the bottom of the eye sits about there. Okay, so you can just draw that in lightly. Just notice someone's got their microphone on, so I will just turn that off. Everybody's good. Okay, now we can work out where does the ear begin or intersect that line. It's 1/5 of the way in, so you can see this is 5 across and it intersects at about 1 or 50 and intersects at 10, whichever way you like to look at it. So if I divide that into 5 sections, oh gosh, this will test me now, won't it? I'm going to just guess and say about there-ish. Yep, that'll do. Not very good at maths, but if you want to break it all down mathematically, go for it. It's an even better way to make it work for you. Okay, so now we've got those things sorted out. We know we're going to intersect the ear here. The eye comes down to there about the halfway line, and then the other intersection is there. So now we can start to just lightly draw these things in and join the dots, hopefully. Hopefully they'll join up. Bring the antler up to about there. And we've got this beautiful arc that comes out like this and down. And having that eye there is really helpful because now I know where to bring that to. So we've got that shape there, and then we've got the ear that comes out, and it starts around the middle of the eye, so about there, and dips down and up and then intersects here. So can you see how I've worked that out? So where the ear begins on the face is at about where the eye, halfway down the eye, assuming I've got my eye in the right spot. I'm going to say it's about there. Okay, so that's that shape on that side. Easy peasy. Then we can move over to the other side and we can say, well, this antler is taller than that one, so it's going to come up to about there. So we can continue that line up through there like that. And it's got a rounded top on it. This one is a little bit more rounded than the other. The other's sort of got a corner almost on the left side and then a rounded right side. This one's more rounded both sides. And then it comes down like that. Now let's work out where things sit in this side. So if we have, where's my halfway on that one? I'm going to say it's about 50. My halfway mark is there. So the eye, yeah, that's not going to help me at all with my maths. So I'm just going to draw it in and wing it. Sometimes you just got to try and wing it. Figure out where your ear goes. So the ear starts at about there. The point of the ear is here, approximately. So it can come out like this and then down. Doesn't hit that line, but it comes down about that far. And then a little bump. I've gone up too high now, so that needs to come down there. No, wrong there. And across there towards the neck. So the ear comes across like that. Yep. Bump of the eye above the eye comes around like that. So just drawing in all the pieces, and then the eye sits inside this part here. So it doesn't quite touch the bottom there of the line. I've come too far in. Maths would be good if I could figure it out. Where does that intersect? About there, isn't it? Intersect up through there like that. Yep, that's better. So bring the ear across there more. Just wanted a bit more space on this side for the eye to sit here. So we've got an eyelid, and then we've got the bottom of the eye. which nearly touches our grid mark, not quite, it's a little bit off. And the lid comes across like that, and the eye sits in there. Lovely. Okay, so there's a bit of toing and froing and a bit of figuring out. Don't be worried if you have to rub stuff out and redraw it, because that's how we learn. I'm going to say that's about there-ish. Yeah, and then this bit up here, the ear comes down, and then we've got some skin there. Beautiful. Then we can move down into this bottom quarter. So remember, our neck goes off the edge of the page at the corner there. So we can just draw a line down through there like that, and then another line up to about there on this side. So we've got a nice little triangle in our negative space on both of those sides of the neck. Looking at the negative space around the outside of it, small skinny triangle down here, and then a nice big wide one up here. So that's cool. And just bringing the bottom of the eye around like that, so we know where that goes to. And then we've got to do the bottom left quarter. So you can see that that comes up. The neck continues up to about there. And then we have this chin coming out. It's almost like a camel shape, isn't it, this face? See similarities of other animals when you start doing this. Just drawing in the nose and mouth. Is that down low enough there? How far down is that? 7, just past halfway. 15, 7, yeah, it's about right. And then we can draw our nostrils in. So remember, the left one is smaller than the right because we can see more of the right side. It sits about there. Once you get your drawing in, then you can start to put your colours and your tones and things in. You've just got to make sure you get things in the right spot first. Okay, I'm just going to draw the bridge of the nose now and the bump on the top of the head. So continuing the bump above the eye, which comes up a little bit higher here. And then up into the left side, we've got this bump, nearly hits the V between the two antlers. And then it comes across like this. And then down there, down the side here. So we've got that line that runs down there through the nose. And then we've got the other line there, and we've got the dark on the other side of that. So there's a lot of subtle sort of shadows and lights through this. So we really need to study it closely to find all the different nuances and bumps and lumps and hairy bits. Okay, better finish off this ear now. So the ear comes down from about there, comes down and then up, up to here. Out there. Goodie-o. So I reckon that's probably enough of a drawing to get started for the next part of the class when we put our colours on there. So just make sure you tidy it up, and you might want to remove your halfway marks. If you do that, just outline the edges of your page so that you know where they are if you need to find them later on. So I've got to put a little mark around the edge like that so that I can just, if you take your line out and then you're halfway through and you think, oh, I know that eye sits at about the halfway mark, so where's the halfway gone? And you can find it again with these marks outside your page if you remove the ones that are on there now. You don't have to, but I like to because they just get a bit distracting sometimes. So you can use your kneadable eraser to take those off. Something like that. And then we should be just about ready to get cracking after we have the tea break. I'll give you the colours now. This is what I've picked out to use. So I've literally just tried to match whatever is in the picture. This big one is a, hopefully, Flinders Blue Violet. It's just still in one piece because it's fairly new, but I might break that as we go. So here I've got a dark blue, which is quite nice. It's a bit of paper. I'll show you. I'll do a swatch page. I'll find a clean page in my diary. I'll put it on here actually. So I've got a dark blue, which I quite like because of the complementary thing with the browns and oranges. And I think that'll be quite lovely inside the spots that have the dark blodge on them. Splodge. And I've got a brown, which is kind of an earthy, taupey sort of brown. I picked up this yellow mustard kind of colour, which I can see a bit of in the picture. And then I've got an orangey terracotta-y sort of tone as well. So they're my darker colours. Then we move into the mids with your orange and your blue. Bit of blue because the blue I can see in the ears and the shadows. And then I've got a bit of purple for the same thing. Purples and blues are yummy for your shadows. And I've got light blue. So there I can see light blue, you know, in the lighter areas that are not really bright, but they're lighter. So in the ears again, there's some light blues. Got a light creamy colour, which may be called Australia Grey, but I don't know for sure. But it's something creamy, which is really quite nice for those lighter skin tones. And then I've got a white, which you can't see on the paper because it's white. And the darkest one here is my blue violet, which is my go-to for my darks. Now I'll probably use some of that in the eye, the really, really dark areas, the nostrils and those sorts of spots. So that is my palette. So if you want to grab your colours, if you haven't already done that, now's a good time to do that. I've tried to put them in order of tone. It's really important to make sure that you have a nice range of tone, and that's why I do that. So I know that I've got a really strong dark and my mids are all lovely mid-tones, and then I've got my lightest colours there as well. This should be up here with the darks. That's my blue violet. It's a wonderful dark to get. If you don't have one, see if you can find one or something similar. So what it is a really dark purpley colour. It's lovely for shadows and things, and I just like it a little bit better than black. Blacks can get a bit kind of heavy, and that's my eraser. So I'll leave that there for now, and we'll have a 10-minute, 8 minutes or so. What is it now? 10:02. So maybe come back at 10 past 10, and we'll get stuck into doing the colour version of this one. I look forward to seeing you then. Okay, so I forgot to press record for a couple of minutes. What I've done is I've blocked in where I can see this mustard yellow colour on the giraffe. So if you want to block in that area where I've done it with some of this mustard colour, that'll be a good place to start. Once we've got that in there, then we can pick up, I'm going to go with the orangey tones. I'm trying to stay in the mid-tones to start with. Then we've got room to get darker and lighter as we go. So I'm just going to zhoosh a bit of this orange around in there as well, over some of the yellow. It's slightly, is it darker or not? Where's my little bit of red stuff? Red cellophane, which helps us to find the tones. They might be a similar tone. Let me see. Put them next to each other. Yep, pretty much the same tone, aren't they? Neither is lighter or darker. So they're the same kind of tone, which means that we can use both of those as this mid-tone undercolor and just mix them together. So when you're mixing colors with pastels, you do it on the paper, not necessarily on a palette. Well, you can't really. And it's often a good idea to have a test piece of paper nearby, just so that you can mix your colors or check the colors on a test piece or a scrap piece of paper nearby, and make sure they're what you want before you put them on the actual painting. So that's a little bit of orange over the yellow. And I will mute that down, but it's a nice combo, I think. Now, once I've got some of that on there, I'm trying to go slow so I'm not racing ahead of everyone, which means I can sip my coffee, can't I? Okay, so I'm just thinking about these brown blotches. I don't know if this brown is going to be dark enough. Yeah, it will be. What I need to do then is go to my cream. So I'm looking at the neck, and the colour on the neck under the brown blotches is this lighter colour, isn't it? It's the cream that I picked up. So I don't usually go straight to the lights because I like to keep my light for last, but we've still got our whites and our pale blues, or the sunshine. And this colour will become the skin colour of the giraffe on the neck area. So just wiping that over, using the pastel on its side. So try not to use the end of it, because if you use the tip of it, what you'll get is sharper lines, and then they're not soft and you can't push them in as nicely as you can if you have a nice, even sort of smooth, I don't know, layer, I guess, of pastel over the other colours. So you can see now that I'm putting the cream over those other colours that we put down before. See how it's getting a bit more muted now. So that was the effect that I wanted to achieve. But I needed to have something underneath it first, just to give it a bit of warmth and a bit of interest. So the skin tone, or the undertone of most of this guy, is this creamy colour. So what I'm going to do is fill in the rest of it now, and we'll lose some information. So where you've put, detailed for the eyes, etc., you might lose some of that information. But because we've already drawn it once, we've got a bit of an idea of where everything sits. So I'm just using this pastel and wiping it around the page lightly, and try and leave the eye sort of undone at this point so I can find it again. Just getting that mid-tone and the cream blending together nicely on our page. So then we can start to build up on it. So it looks a bit weird at this stage, but what we're going to do next, once you've got all your creams on, is blend it all in so it gets nice and smooth, and the colours then start to merge together. Okay, I'm just going to put a bit of it in the ear as well. I know the ear isn't all cream, but this is the base layer. Same on the other side. So just putting some cream on there. Beautiful, like that. Good. Now, once you've got that layer down, pick up your brown. So this is your mid to dark brown colour. And we're going to just block that in where we can see the darker tones. So, for instance, the top of the aerial thingos, antlers, whatever they are, bumpy bits on the top of the head, they could probably go a bit darker, but that's okay. We're starting off now with sort of a darker mid, and just looking at those shadows. Remember the shadows that we had around the bumps on that antler there on the right? We're just doing some subtle shadowing down the side there. I know it's going to be darker as we move on, and we'll put other colours in there, probably some blue to create the dark. But I just want to try and map this out a little bit more with some tone and colour so that we can still find all our parts. Okay, this side of the face, this right side between the nose and the eye is in shadows. So put some dark down through there. And we've got a bit of brown around the nose and the mouth, so I'm going to put a bit of the brown through there as well. A little bit out there on the brow of that left eye. A little bit between the ear and the antler on the right. Put some in the ear as well over on the right side, just to get a bit of shading in there. I will put blue in because I think the blue is going to be really nice to create some shadow, and it'll also cool it off a little bit. And then down through here. So see how that's just all starting to sort of mute the colours a little bit more and make them softer. If you want to have a bright orange giraffe, by all means go for it. Don't let me stop you. I used to have a lady in class, Sue Turner, and she did everything in purples and yellows and was always amazing. Amazing. So don't be afraid to, try different things. It's kind of fun. So that's just smushing around some of the grey. And you can still see my paper colour underneath it. And that's why we're going to blend it next. You don't always have to blend. If you really like this loose look, and that's traditionally how pastels were or are, is that lovely loose drawing kind of effect rather than a painting effect. And that's why there's a lot of debate about whether it's classified as a drawing or a painting. And I think it's a bit tricky, if you put, I put a painting into the Ipswich Art Awards, which is on this weekend, and I had to put it into the drawing and pastels category. But how do you compete with drawing? Because I feel like drawing, especially with graphite or charcoal, is a much different application to pastels. And the way I use pastels, I feel like it looks more like a painting than a drawing. So yeah, there's a bit of debate about that. It's quite interesting as to how people kind of classify different things. Anywho, if you've got enough on there now, let's start to blend this in. So this is just going to be our first layer. You've always got to begin with a first layer. You need to get some pastel on the paper so that then you can start to build up your layers and your tones and colours. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to go around the whole shape and push this in. Now, often if you're pushing in the pastel, you want to think about the direction of the texture of the item or thing you're doing. Now, this is fur, so it doesn't really have to go in any one direction. So I'm just trying to sort of vary the direction that I push it around in so that it looks more even and maybe not like it's got stripes or something in it. If you run your finger in the same direction all the time, you tend to make patterns, and that would work if you're doing stuff like grass or feathers or something like that that has direction in it. Or even if it does have fur that runs in a particular direction, then you would run your pastels or your finger around in that direction. But because this is just our first layer and then we'll put more on top, we're just going to move your finger in different directions just to vary the way that the pigment moves around on the paper. Okay. People get really scared when they're going to lose their drawing. So when you're rubbing it all in, you think, oh, I've just drawn that up. I've measured everything. I had the eye in the right spot and now it's gone. I don't know where it went. It is, I know, I get it. It's kind of, oh no. But that's why we put these halfway lines in, and that's why we rehearse the drawing, because you've got a memory of it. And so hopefully that will help you figure out where it's got to go. You can see I've left a little gap there for the eye. because I know the eye is going to be dark, so I can just leave that dark spot there so that I know where it sits. You can give yourself clues like that and try to sort of leave things where you can find them again. You might find some areas you haven't got enough pastel on the paper, and if that's the case, you might want to add a bit more. So in my leaf over there, oh, not leaf, we did leaves last week. In my ear here, this ear, I didn't put enough down, but I'm not too worried because I'm going to add more anyway over that. I'm not too concerned about that. The other thing that is quite annoying about pastels is how sort of smudgy they are. So it's quite hard to get a really hard, sharp line with them. And that's where pastel pencils can come in really handy. So if you have a pencil, you can use that to do things like eyelashes or fine lines or fine detail. And you'll find that that will be much better than trying to use these big chunky sticks. However, I reckon I can get a pretty fine line with a chunk of pastel, as long as it's got a nice sharp edge on it. So sometimes you might have to break it to create a sharp edge. So then you can get a nice sharp line that you can do the hairs or the lashes or the edges with. Okay. So I've basically just blocked all that in. So now you can start to see there's not much form going on, but you can see where I've put the darker brown and a little bit of the cream where the lighter parts are. So it'll start to now be making a bit more sense. And then we can continue to build up those layers, creating those lights and darks. But just pushing all of that in. I reckon under this neck here, it looks a bit more yellow to me, maybe like it's catching a bit of sunshine. And then over on this side, on the right-hand side, it's more blue or purple. So maybe there's some more shade there. Okay. So now we've got that marked in. Because I'm working flat, I'm collecting a lot of dust on my page. So I've got to tip off the dust. Gets quite annoying. Try not to blow it. Goes everywhere. It's very messy. All right. So now we're going to start to work on the textures and the lumps and the bumps and all the bits and pieces that give this guy a 3D look, basically. So let's grab your darks. I'm going to go for the dark blue first. And then if I need to go darker, I can pick up my blue violet. And I want to darken off the top of these antlers because they're quite dark at the very top there. So I'm using the tip of the pastel, still got it holding it on its side, but I'm just tilting it so that I've got the tip of it touching the paper. I'm just putting a little bit of that blue on there, and then I'm going to gently push that around so that it starts to sort of merge down into the bottom part of the antler, like that. So it sort of softly merges back into the brown colours. There's no hard line between the dark and the brown. So we want to try and create that effect if we can. You might not have a dark blue. If you don't have a really dark blue, then try something like a dark brown or a burgundy, something like that. Other than black, I like black, but not very often. I think can be quite dull and I don't know, a bit flat. So I think your blues and your purples and those colours are much nicer for your darks. So just noticing there's a bit of shadow here too, just at the base of that guy. So I'm just putting a bit more of my blue through there. Now, I might come back later and touch that up with my blue violet. Have a think about that and see what I think later. So that's the nice thing. You can always come back and redo or touch up different parts. And because pastels never dry or they don't set or anything, so it's literally just so easy to pick up and keep going without worrying about things drying out. So I can move over now to the other side, the other antler, And I can see on the top of that, it's like a smooth knob on the top, but the dark part is sort of more dark fur that kind of comes up through there. So I'm just going to go not all the way to the top on this one because it's got like a dark brown sort of bump on the top, which means I need to use my brown. And I don't know if this is going to be a dark enough, but anyway, we'll try. And if not, I'll go grab another one that's a little bit darker, or I might get a burgundy colour. I think that might be good. But, more of a reddy purple. See what I've got over there. One moment. Found this, it's quite beautiful actually, magenta sort of colour. See what happens when I put that on there. Don't be afraid to use other colours that aren't actually in the picture. You can be a bit brave and play around with other colours. It's just the tone that matters the most. As long as you get your tones right, it really doesn't matter. I'm now using some blue violet over that reddy colour and trying to achieve that sort of dark brown burgundy kind of look on the top of that. I can see it clearly on the screen next to me, and on the printout it's not as easy to see. Tipping off my dust again. And then I'm going to come back in with my blue and touch that up again. So sort of softly doing little hair-like marks that come up across the top of that bulby thing at the top there. There we are. That looks all right. There's one on the other side as well I've just seen. Not as obvious though. So you can just see the top of it here. So I'll just do a little bit of a suggestion of it. My beautiful magenta and then my blue violet, and softly pull that down into the blue and then put a bit more of the blue on. I want it to look like it's got some sort of hair or fur that comes up around that area. There we go. It's nice. All right, good. Now, as we come down, as I said before, there's a touch of a shadow just here. Let's see what the purple looks like for the shadow. This is the blue violet for the shadow through there. Purples are always really lovely in the shadows. Shallow. I want to sing that song now, Shallow. Anyway, I won't. I'll do it for you. Pushing that around in there, just softening that off. See how that's starting to come alive now? It's so nice, isn't it, when you get the colours all working properly. Back on the other side, I'm just putting some of the dark around, you know, those little bumps we talked about earlier. I want some shadow or dark areas around those. So I'm just going to put a bit of the blue back in there. And I'll come back afterwards and lighten up those bumps, and we'll put the light on the other side. I just want to try and get the shadowy kind of tones through here. So I'm just using a bit of the blue violet and some of the dark blue, and together they're making a really lovely shadow colour. Yum, yum. It's nice when you can make a beautiful colour on the paper that you're happy with. And that'll come all the way down to there. So I'm just going to keep, it's a cream colour, but it's in shadow. So I'm just going to come down there with a little bit of the blue violet again. I don't want to make it really, really dark, because we've got to save our darks for the darkest parts, which is the eye, the eyes and inside the ears and the nose. So try not to go too dark at this stage. It's the same with the lights. You want to save your lights for last. You want to save your darks for the darkest. So make sure you don't go too dark yet. Okay. So that's that side, and we've got a lovely shadow running down through there like that. Nice. I'm trying not to rush so everyone can keep up. So if I'm talking a bit slow, I'm not drunk. I'm just trying to pace myself and not rush ahead. So I tend to rush when I'm doing painting. I get excited and then I forget where I was, and I forget that I'm teaching because I just get carried away with myself. I'm trying hard not to get too carried away. I'll just put a bit more of the mustard yellow through there because I quite like how that works with the blue. It's a bit yummy. And while I'm giving you some time, I'll just tidy up my edges a little bit if I can with my eraser. So this is the hard part. When you don't put a background on, you've got to try and keep your paper nice and clean and keep your edges nice and sharp. And so sometimes the eraser, usually it will, but you've just got to, it works really well, but you've just got to do it slowly and keep kneading it so you keep finding a clean edge to keep rubbing your paper. So if you do what I just did then and use the same piece, it just puts the colour back on the paper. So you're not actually removing it then, which means that this is also a really great little blender. Okay, so we've got to that bit. Now we're going to just hang around up in this antler thing again for a minute because I want to put the bumps in. So you can see there's a little shine. I've got this creamy colour again. There's a shine just on there, on the very top of it, that bulby bit. I'll use my cream, not the white, save the white for last. And then I'm going to use my cream to put some shine on those lumps that we've got on the antler thing here. So just a few little circles, or half moon shapes really, aren't they? 1, 2, 3. And we'll merge these in and muck around a little bit with the shadows and stuff. So just starting off with a light coloured spot. And then we've got, there's one there that goes down near towards the eye. And then we've got that lovely light section that runs around like that above the eye. So I'm just going to mark that in lightly. We'll need to do the bit behind it before we get into too much detail there, but I just wanted to mark it out so I know where it sits. There's a little bit of shine on the other antler too, just at the top there. So I am getting dust on my picture, so I have to tip it off again. All right, so if you've got a bit of a little dot there, then we can now come under the on the underside of each dot and do something like that. So like a little shadow shape underneath, like a half moon shape underneath each one, because what we're trying to do is create a lump now. So it's all about the shadows. It's like last week's leaf. The shadow made the leaf lift up off the step, gave it some body. So just looking at your picture and looking at where it's darker around those little knobs. Okay, so something like that. And then once you've got those dark areas down around those little light spots, then just want to grab a finger and kind of dab it so that it softens it off a little bit. And just hopefully starts to look like they're raised. So I'm just dabbing it with my finger. A bit like that. Might be a bit too bright, I don't know yet. Maybe pop a bit of this yellow back in there. So this is where you get to sort of fiddle around. And as you go and layer like this, you sort of start to blend less. So as you get into the detail, you don't blend so much as you dab, or you just let the colour sit on the top and not push it in around at all, just depending on what you're doing and how it's looking. So I think that's looking okay. Not totally in love with it, but it does the job. So I'm just going to pop some of the orangey colour back in here. What I'm trying to do now is make it look like it's got fur on it. If you look at your picture, you can see there's fur. So I'm doing these little squiggly marks with the orange, using the edge of it so that it's smaller lines, and trying to create that furry kind of effect with it. So just little short lines like that, running across, so backwards and forwards, just small little lines, almost keeping, well, I am almost keeping the pastel on the paper all the time and not lifting it off too much. And that way you create a sort of a more natural look. Now I'm just going to dab, not blend. If I blend, it'll just turn into mud, but I just want to dab so that it pushes it into the paper. And hopefully starts to look like some texture. I'm going to get rid of that white line just there. So there's not really any shine there. That's my outline that I didn't get rid of before or go over. It's a bit better. So we've got some lumpy looking thingies on there. That looks all right. That's cool. We might now look at the lump on the forehead that sits here. So if I'm going to grab my blue again, and again using it on its side, because I just want to make sure that it's quite soft. A lovely soft sort of mark, and just sort of moving around and to get that shape of the top of the head, or the lump on the head, and then pulling that down towards the nose. I know it's not that dark down that way, but once I push all this in, it won't look as dark, and then I can darken the darkest bits. But sort of that's kind of the shape we want to achieve in there. Push that in there. Now where you might have, gone too wide or something, just come back over it with your other colour that might be there. So for instance, this creamy colour I can see is here around the left eye, on our left. So I can just put some of that down through there like that and change the shape of this. But I want to push this in, this lump, head lump bit. It needs to be a bit higher actually, so I can always come back and move that up a bit. Just want to push that in first, softly, softly. It's all about layering, isn't it? When you put a colour down and you think, oh gosh, I don't know about that. And if it doesn't look right, then you can add other ones over the top. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to just build this up slightly with your oranges and your mustardy colour. And work on getting all the contours in the nose. So I've just put orange over that. And now I'm going to rub that in. The top of this lump also has a little shine on it through the hairs, sort of almost that maroony colour like the top of the antlers. So we can repeat what we did there with the brown and the magenta. And that'll be quite nice, I think. Just running down through here. I'm going to do that. I'll get the magenta and put a bit of that on here. And then that will sort of tie in with the antlers as well. This is a lovely colour. I forget what it's called. I think it's a schminky. It's very soft and quite dusty, but it just does beautiful things when you mix it with your greens and your blues. Creates the most glorious shadows. Still not dark enough. Where's my brown gone? Here. A bit of brown on that. No, brown's not dark enough either. Oh well, I'll just put some of it down here in this shadow side. Pushing that in. Remember, this is fur and it's sort of growing vertically up and down in our direction. So try to pull your finger around in that sort of direction so that you're starting to try and get the feel of the hair or the fur on the nose. Tipping off dust. So that shadow there on this side of the nose and down towards that right eye is very strong. So we're going to try and keep that dark because I think that looks quite good there. And then I can just softly accentuate some of those darker areas. So you can see just in here, it's darker. And then around here and on the top of the knob on the head, there's a little bit of darker kind of tones in that area there. And then on the side of the nose, so we've got almost a stripe down there of darker, and it kind of goes into all this bit here. So that's my blue violet. So I've just put some of that there where I can see that there are darker tones, and I'm just going to push that in now, just to try and create the contours and the bumps in that section on the face, because it does sort of stick out, doesn't it? And then coming down the side of the face here, so that line down the side gives us that nice ridge on the nose. So again, tipping off dust. There we go. And to lighten up, so we might just lighten this up here with some yellow or ochre-y mustard sort of colour, because it is lighter on that side, and I'll pop a bit of cream on there as well just to give it a bit more sunshine. So that's catching the light, must be coming from above. Bit of my yellow creamy colour, and then right about there it's lighter where the sun hits it, and then as it comes down it gets lighter through here and down through there, and then we'll have to look at the nostrils and things soon. I'll do this bit, just pushing this in. Down through there. interesting what different colours do when you mix them together, isn't it? The blues and the magenta and green, not green, it's gone green. Yeah, nice. So before we carry on down into the nose and over to the right, let's focus on this eye and ear on the left side, so then we can get that done and move across the page. So we're not working in any particular order today. Usually we go from back to front because that's the logical thing to do with pastels. And we technically are, layering back to front, but I think we might just sort of move across the page and do the things that are furthest away to start with, which is, in this instance, this eye is further away than the other eye because the head's turned slightly. So let's focus on this bit. I've just pushed all that creamy colour in because I want to keep that side a little bit lighter where the light's catching on the top of the eye there and in the ear. So we need a bit more stuff in the ear because there's not enough pastel in there. So I'm going to throw, see this beautiful sky blue, put a bit of that in there because I can see blue in there and I think it's quite lovely. And then while you've got blue in your hand, you might wander over to the other ear and pop a bit in there for later. So this is what I like to do. If I've got a colour in my hand, I'll look around and I'll think, where else can I see this colour? And I can see it around under that other eye and down through here. And there's a little bit in the muzzle as well and around above the nostrils. So I don't know whether this comes from being lazy because I don't want to pick up the blue again, or efficient. I can't decide which one I am. Either way, I just like to do that. If I can see a colour in one spot, I'll throw it down wherever it is in another spot that I can find it. Maybe so I don't forget later. So anyway, blue in the ear. And then I'm going to push that in gently, gently with my ring finger. Don't know why, but when I'm being careful in smaller areas, I like to use this finger. And just pushing that around to get the nice shape of the ear. Now there's lots of different tones and things going on in here. First off, we've got that lovely dark area in there. So there's like a triangular shape here that runs across there. And then there's a little bit more of the dark that comes across here. And that's creating a bit of a ridge through that ear there. Okay, so now I can softly push that in. And if I pull it softly from right to left, it'll just make really nice soft marks without being too strong or have too much line. Okay, so that's going to be the shadow of the inside of the ear. So I'm just going to take the dust off again. So that's the shadowy bit. You've got to get this dark shadow in first, and then we can build on top of it. So we've got little hairs that hang around on the top. But before we do that bit, let's get into the eye. So the eye, I'm just going to grab a bit of charcoal so I've got a bit more control, and then I'll go over it. The eye comes around like this, and it sort of goes about there. So you can use charcoal with pastel. Sometimes if you just want something a little bit harder to make a mark or work out where something sits, charcoal's a really good option. And if you're quite happy with how it looks, then you're welcome to leave it as is with the charcoal, or you can pick up your pastel and go over the marks you've made to darken them or change the colour or whatever. Just notice the edge of the ear has a little dark kind of shadow around it. So I just did that with charcoal too. Because it's a smaller piece, I've got a bit more control over how it moves around. Okay. Now, I might just get this dark blue and see if I can darken this off a little bit more in here. I feel like I want to make that a bit darker. And maybe a tad more in there as well. Pulling it out softly. So what we're going to do next, we're going to darken off the top of the ear, and you can see there's little white hairs that hang around over this dark section. So to make the hairs look light, we need to make sure we've got the dark underneath. So always thinking ahead really, but what do I need to do to make the, you know, the, did I say leaves? I meant hairs or eyelashes or whatever they are, fluffy bits. So yeah, thinking ahead all the time and just planning ahead and working out, okay, what do I need to do to make that happen? And you've got to kind of think about what's going to be underneath or behind something. So if I want these little hairs to look white, then I need to make sure I've got a dark colour around or below them. I'm just darkening off that, see that little section in there between the eye and the ear. It's the top of the ear that's kind of folded down just here. So I'm trying to get that bit in there so that I can put the little hairs on it. But first I want to make sure I've got the eye in the right spot and that it looks like an eye. So even though we can't really see the eye, you've got to make sure you get those shapes in the right place. And there's also little eyelashes coming off that eye. Okay. So just going to study this picture for a second. Got it on my screen so I can zoom in, get a good close look at it. Okay. So it's almost like there's a grey, there's a little grey bit. I'll just put some light there so you know what I'm talking about. The little grey section there. And then we've got this dark, dark eye. So I'm just going to put a bit of cream over that blue-violet section. I don't know if that'll work very well. Come back in with my blue-violet again just to define it a little bit more. So there's times like this when you say to yourself, do I need black? Is this a dark enough colour, or can I add some black here and just really get some really dark, dark depth into this? And I feel like I need black. So even though I said I don't like to use it very often, it's good in just, you know, one or two small spots if you really want to get something quite defined. So I'm going to go and grab a bit of black. Okay. And I'm going to just put it, just a smidge of it, just here between the ear and the eye, just to sort of separate them a little bit. Create what, like, I know you can hardly see it, and that's the point, like you can hardly see it in the picture. So, and just a few little lashy looking things coming across there. So just a dab of black that will kind of make that a lot darker against this part of the eye, the ear, sorry, the fold of the ear, which is also dark, but the eye and the lashes are darker. I just wanted to make them more obvious. Okay, back down into the ear now. So in this section here, we have a really light area where the sun is shining. But first I'm going to add a bit of my pale blue. See, there's a bit of pale blue through here, like that. It just gives the ear a bit more of a crease inside. So it makes it look a bit more solid. So your blues are great for these sorts of things, for getting your lights and your shapes and things happening, where it's not in bright light, but it's got, reflected light. Now, all those little eyelashes, let's have a crack at doing that with this blue, not white, because we don't want them to be too bright, but we just want to have these soft little hairs coming down through here on the top of the ear. Hard to get the wispy bits sometimes with the pastel because they're so chunky. But if you find an edge and just do these soft little wispy marks, and that might work. And don't overdo it. We just want to keep it nice and soft. And then where we've got the light in that ear, I'm going to go for white now. This is my lightest. I can't go any lighter than this, but this is a really light section on this guy. So let's just make that lovely and white. That's where the light or the sun is catching it. Like that. Dab it softly. Not too much because I'll lose the brightness. And then tip off the dust. I know it looks a bit weird now because we've only got detail in that in a couple of areas, but we'll work our way around the painting and keep moving. So just noticing where it's light around the eye over here on the top side. I've got a little bit of a light. I'm using my creamy colour here. And it's also light down through there. Okay. And if you wanted to lighten that even more, I'd started with cream because I wanted to make sure that I didn't go straight to white. I usually don't go straight to white unless I feel like I need to. So I'll try the cream first, and then where I want to add even brighter highlights, I can just touch that with a bit of the white, a couple of spots, and that'll brighten that up for me. Oops, dirty fingers into clean white is not a good idea. Just dabbing, 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 softly, softly. Like that. And then I got a bit of white into my eyelashes, so I'll just come back over that with a bit of dark blue and darken that off a tad more. There we are. All right, so that's mostly that bit done, I think. We can start moving now across the page, basically. Now, look around the face and just notice where else do I need to add some cream or some light. There's a tiny smidge just here. And then just up here on the left side of that left antler. When I say left and right, it means your left and right, not of the animal. It's a bit of a shine just there. There's a bit of a shine just on the top of the head bump bit in there. It's not a bright white shine, it's a soft shine because it's got hair over it. So if you put a bit of cream on there, just lightly, and then dab it with your finger, it'll be just enough to give it a little bit of a highlight, but not too bright. All right. Cool, cool. So I think that will do for that side. I just feel like I want to touch this eye up a little bit more. Tricky, tricky. Anyway, leave that alone. Now, we'll move across and we'll have a look at this nose. So on the nose, we have a few light spots as well. I'm just going to throw a bit more orange in here. It's gone a bit green with the blue and the yellow. So I'll put a bit more orange through. And then as we come down, it gets lighter. So not too much, but just enough to sort of get rid of some of that greeny tone. Also going to put some up here on the head because it needs a bit more colour in there. Go. A bit more orange through here. And then just very softly pushing that in. I'm not going to push too hard because I don't want to blend it completely. I sort of want some of the orange to sit on top. And that way it'll start to look like it's all fur kind of merging in together. And this edge down the side of the nose here towards that left eye needs to be soft. It's not a really hard line, it's just a soft line. So softening off through there. Running down through here. And then we'll get down into this nose. So there's a fair bit of grey kind of tones down in here. I put some blue there earlier. It's quite light on the end of the nose because obviously that's catching some light. You can start to look at that now a little bit more. Dust again. You can see some of my dust went over here into my light bits. So I'm just going to try and push that across a little bit more. There we are. That'll do for now. Okay, so let's mark in these nostrils. I'm going to grab my charcoal again because I can just do that really softly. So I reckon there's one here, about there, and another one about there. The right one is a bit bigger and it's sort of a different shape. The left one's like a teardrop shape and this one's got a little wiggle in it. So it sort of comes like this and then down and dips. Something like that. And that one over there on the left is not as big. Tipping off dust. So that's about where they go, I reckon. So now we can, I'm going to use black actually, just to get that really dark in there. So if you're happy with where you've sort of marked in your nostrils, or your, yeah, and then put your dark on there just to block that in, get it nice and dark. And then we can build up around it because there's a fair bit of light or white around the nostrils. Got to start getting that texture in there. So I'm going to go to my blue now. This is my mid blue, not my lightest, and just start to sort of mark in where I can see it's almost a grey kind of colour around here. Just putting a bit more of that bluey grey colour in there. If you don't have a blue, then maybe a grey would be nice. Working your way around that. And as you come down lower, it gets a little bit lighter. So we're just blocking in again now. We're lightening down through here. And then we're lightening through here. So we're starting to get some texture and shape happening. So the left side of the muzzle or mouth is lighter. And then we've also got light around our nostrils. So we've got quite a light rim, I guess, around here. I'm just using the end of my pastel. So using that sharp end, still tilted a little bit to get a nice sharp edge on it, something like that. There is dust there, which I'll have to shake off in a minute. That's the sort of thing we want to try and achieve, is to get that white or bright outline around those nostrils so that they look like they're going to sink in. If you have a light pencil, you might feel more comfortable to do it with a pencil. Everyone's different, and it really is just practice to learn how to get the techniques and how to use or hold the pastels to achieve the marks that you want. Okay, so that's starting to come alive now. I'm just going to put some more light where I can see the lightest areas using this blue. Again, the blue isn't as bright as the white, and I'm saving my white to just put on the really, really highlighted spots. Tipping off dust. All right, so once you've marked in those areas, then you can sort of, I'm just going to gently put my fingers in here and softly push it in. I don't want to blend it too much because then it'll just go milky and it'll lose its vibrancy. But I want to just push it in softly so that we're making it stick to the paper, and then we can pop some more on top to really highlight those light bits, and maybe even add a bit of dark here and there to get some more contour happening. If you smudge the nostrils and lose the darks, then it's okay. You can pop it back on again, which I did. So I can get my black again and I can just touch that up again, trying really hard not to get it anywhere else. So this is when you use black, when you're just, it's much like white, you're just in a couple of spots where you really want to emphasize the darks. Now I've grabbed my dark blue and I'm going to use that to create this shadow around this nostril here like this. So you're using the edge of it to draw a line and bringing it around. And you can see there's some little ridges or creases through that area there. I just drew them like that so you can see what I'm talking about. There's some little like creases and lumpy bits of fur or hair. So what I'm doing now is I'm just marking in those darker areas where there's a bit more shadow with the blue. It may not look blue to you, and you know, if you want to use something else, by all means go for it. You don't have to do what I say. But I just like the complementary blue with brown. I think it looks really lovely. You might not have a dark blue. Sometimes they're a hard colour to get. And it's not something that you would normally probably grab when you're in the art shop. I always used to go for the brights. I always grab the greens and the reds and the light blues and the bright blues. But it's amazing how often you need these dark colours. So if you don't have enough darks at the moment, try to maybe stock up on a few, because they're really helpful, really useful. It makes your art a bit more interesting when you can use other colours other than your blacks and greys. So see how I've sort of just penciled in all of that stuff there? So that's just where the darks are sitting, basically, that I can see in the nose. So I will push those in and move them around and smudge it a little bit. But first, before I do that, I want to come back over and just emphasize some of those dark spots a little bit more with this blue violet, because I just think the blue violet gives it such beautiful shadows, and it's such a lovely dark to use. And if you don't have a blue violet, try to get yourself one. It's an Art Spectrum brand. They seem to be pretty much everywhere, easy to get. Softpastels.com.au is a great website for all your pastel stuff. Wonderful people, very efficient. I order from them a lot, actually. They're really good. Okay, so just darkening off some of that with my blue violet, which is the darkest other than black. Now I've got some of that on there. I'm just going to gently dab this in. I don't want to blend too much. I just want to dab to soften off the lines. So see how I'm just dabbing it lightly like that to push in these darks and start hopefully to create some contour. So hopefully it'll start to look like a 3D thing and not a flat thing. Pushing some of that up into the nose there. So that's starting to come together now. So many colours in this face. Amazing. Now, down here on the bottom, we've got a bit of a creamy colour here. So I'm just going to zhoosh a bit of cream down through here. There's a bit of light. So remember we said the left side is a little bit lighter than the right. So there must be more light catching on the left. Just going to lighten that up a tad with my cream and again dab it. Remember, I've still got white in reserve, so saving my white in case I need to add a bit of white to really punch up the light. Okay, and there's a little shine over here. Remember that little shine we found before on the right? A little bit of a shine just there. Put it down too low. Somewhere there. So a bit of cream on that section. I might have lost some of my highlights around my nostril, which I have done. So I can now come back in with my cream and freshen that up a tad. Again, if you have a light pencil, you might find that easier to do in that small space. Pencils are much easier. At the same time, though, it's good to practice with your pastels. So that's the nostrils pretty much done. I'm going to throw a bit of brown in here now just to brown that up a little bit. Around the nose there, you can see it's a bit more browny. So you kind of go back and forth with your colours over and over till you get about the right colour that you're looking for. Mixing and mixing on the paper. It's lovely. Down through here on the bottom there, just above where the mouth is, we've got a bit of a shadow sort of just down through the ridge bit. And then under here, it's a little bit darker. So I'm just going to pop a bit of brown through there. This is not a dark brown. It's kind of a mid brown. See how we're creating contour and shape? It's exciting, isn't it? I love it. Just going to darken that nostril a little bit more. It seems to come. I'm going to see what charcoal will do. Not as dark as black, but it might just bring out that edge of it a tad. There we go. That's better. All the details. There's so much detail here. You wouldn't think so. Okay, it's darker under there. So again, charcoal is a really good option if you just want to have, something a bit smaller and manageable that's still going to give you a dark-ish line or mark. Dab, dab, dab. Tip off my dust. And there's a few little creases, light little bits around in here. I'm just going to lightly touch up there just to give the feeling of the fur and the wrinkles in the skin through here. So I'm just using the edge of the end of this stick, this pastel, it's cream again, and just lightly lightening up some of that fur through that area there. Okay, so you just got to keep noticing the tones. That's what's important. And if you can't find the tones, look at your black and white picture. That's going to tell you where the lightest parts are. So I've just turned that on now, my black and white one, and that's going to show me where to put my whites in relation to this nostril part. So I can see, I'll tell you where it is. It's here. Got a little glow just there on the top of that nostril there, and then there's a little running down like that part there, and that will shine because it's right next to the black inside the nostril. So just down through there, we've got a little bit of light just wisping around in here, little hairs they are catching the light, and then down through here. So you can just do little hairy kind of marks like that to give him some whiskers. And then over here, there's that little shine just there on the right side. And the top of the right nostril, we've got a shine on there. So your black and white picture is really good for finding your whitest whites or your lightest lights. Okay. So that's probably about all we need to do with the white at this stage on that section. And if you want to put some little hairs on there, they look like there might be kind of a mid-tone, maybe the blue would work there. Try that. Might be a bit too bright, a bit too much, I think. Maybe the dark blue. Try that. Be a bit dark, but anyway, just put a few little whiskers around there, like that. That's cute. Whiskery chin. Softly, softly. So this little pastel is quite a hard pastel, so it's got a nice sharp edge, so I can get a very fine line with it. Little whispery, sort of whiskery marks. That's when you can use pastels to do these little, eyelashes and things. When you've got a nice hard one, it's got a nice clean, sharp edge. Some of them get too rounded and you can't get a hard line. All right, that's going to do for that part now. So let's just move back up into the nose, and I'm going to put a bit of cream. I'm going to lie it flat here on the bridge of the nose and just zhoosh it around, because there's a shine on that bridge there. Okay, that's just telling us where it turns and there's shadow underneath. So I'm just going to put a bit of a shine across there. And there's also a shine here. Another one over there. Just tells us what the bones are doing under the skin, basically. Right. I'm just going to pull that down a tad to get try and get some of the hairs growing in that direction. There we go. Lovely. Now we might move over to the other eye. This will be the fun bit. So looking at our colour picture. Alrighty, I've got this zoomed right in now, so I've got a much better view of it. I'm going to grab the charcoal and just have a look at that. Oh, just noticed this bit needs to come down a tad there. Just using charcoal again to create that bit around the mouth there. Sort of comes down below the line of the chin. Probably not that far in, actually. I've gone too far over. Smudge it off. This is how you fix stuff. Just smudge it like this. And then maybe lighten it a tad. Colour green. Lighten it up a little bit in there. Smudge it in a little bit more. And then that grey bit that comes down through here. I nearly missed it. So we're just going to come down there and then off over the edge because it's a darker sort of area. Charcoal's working nicely for that. Okay. Yeah, that's that bit. And then in this bit, there's some creases. If you can see all the creases in there, all that skin. So I'm just using, again, charcoal just to get those little creases marked out through there. Anywho, move on to the eye. So the eye is still here, luckily. So I'm going to draw that back in again and make sure we get the shape right. So we've got the eye there. And the lid above it. So the lid's about there. And we've got all this shadow around in this bit here. And then there's dark under the eye, and then the eye itself is quite dark. There's a little bit of shine in there. So I reckon it sits about there. Maybe slightly more over this way. Make it a teeny bit wider. The lashes come out like that. And the lid comes up there. Okay, so this is the eye that we can see the detail with. The other one we can't see, and that's okay. Just got to mark in all these creases and things that are happening around here. Now this area up above the eye, between the ear and the antler thingy, has lots of wrinkles and creases. It's quite creasy and wrinkly there, and down through here. Just using charcoal to get some lines in there, bit of tone. And then remember that bulge above the eye is quite light because it's catching the light. Cool. All right. I think that's in about the right spot. Yeah, that might do. Might do for now. Okay. So if you've marked that in with charcoal, that's great because then you can do it with pastel over the top. I'm just going to tip off my dust again. All right, so we might just look at this area up here first behind the, between the ear and the antler, because they've got a few creases and there's a bit of light in there too. So what I'm going to do is grab my cream and just do a few lines through there to indicate that the light's catching on those creasy bits. Like that. We'll have to do this ear too, but we'll do that after. All right, and then we come down and we've got kind of blue colours through here, I think. See a lot of blue in the ear. Blues and browns. Grab a bit of brown. Go up here in between all these creases. So we're just creating this bit of skin up here. A bit more down through here. I've got creases in there as well, so I might put some dark lines through there with my blue violet. Lovely. And then some more dark up here. And again, just softly smudging with the fingers. That should probably be enough. info for there. And then we've got this beautiful hump that comes over here. It sort of sits here and down. And that's the part that catches the light right there. And then it comes across the eye into there. It's quite light there. So that's nice. We can push that around a little bit and pull that up through there. So remember, you've got to do the stuff that's behind first and then come forward, which is why we just did that little bit behind the ear, or behind the lump, between the ear, because it'd be harder to get at once we've got this part all in. Okay. Good. So now we can see that this little eyelid, let's go back into the eye, in here has a little bit of light blue, I reckon, through there. It's just a smidge. And that's probably too light, but that's okay. We can quieten it down soon. And then under the eye, we've got that lovely light area as well. So I'm just using light blue to mark that in. And then there's a little bit here and it comes down in towards the nose. Down around under here, down here into this face area. So again, just looking at your tones and putting all of those in as you see them, as you go, basically. Okay, so that's some of that light round there, up there, a bit more up here. Touching up your lights where it's light. I'll pop white on this bit afterwards. There. Okay, so I'm just going to softly push this in, just using one finger and making it stick, basically. Okay, we're trying to create contour and form and shape. So getting all those lovely light tones through there. So then we can start to look at shadow. So under here, it's probably not dark enough. This one maybe, blue violet, bit of that, just lightly through here to get a bit of shadow under the eye and create some contour down through there, under and down. So that's the blue violet. It looks really dark, but once we push it around and blend it in a little bit, it won't be quite as severe. Just want to try and get those lovely darks down so then we can build on top of them and create the shapes and tones. There we are. All right, so that's a start. That's good. Just going to pop a bit of this orangey colour over that now because I don't want it to be all purpley. Too purpley anyway. Right there. Bit of the orange through there so that we get a darker tone, but it's not too dull. So the orange warms it up a little bit, makes it much prettier. Cool. All right, let's look at this eye now. So eyes are fun, I reckon they are anyway. Grab your charcoal again And what we're going to do is we're going to draw the outline of the eye. So that comes down fairly low. So not the eyeball, just that dark outline underneath the eye. Comes down like that. And it's quite dark around the eye, isn't it? All this area here. We've got a fair bit of dark sort of coming up on the left side. So I'm just using charcoal. I'm just dabbing that in to soften it off a little bit. Okay, darking. And then we've got the eyelashes, which are lovely and dark as well. So there's a shadow from the eyelid casting onto the eyeball. So we need to make sure we make that area just here darker so that we get that shadow on the eyeball. Too much dust, I've got to tip it off. Okay, so the eyeball I'm going to do in black. Just softly, because then I'll dab it and it won't look as dark. Just want to get that fairly dark. The eyelashes are darker, so I want to make sure that I get them darker than the eyeball. And also the area between the eyeball and the rim of the eye is quite dark. There's a really dark line running around there. So I want to try and make sure I get that nice and dark as well. It's a bit hard with this chunky little bit of pastel, but I'm going to keep cracking along and see how we go. So see how I blacked the eyeball and then I dabbed it, so it's now not as dark. And then I can go darker around the edges of it with black again and create a variation in tone. So even if you do use a really dark colour, you can always lighten it slightly just by dabbing or adding something else to it. So now there I have gone under the rim of the eye. So we did the rim of the eye in the charcoal. I've just done a line under that in the black because I want that to be darker again. Like that. And you can see on the picture that it's not a hard straight line. It's sort of a bit soft around this area here, and it gets a bit smudgy and blurry. So that's good because that works with pastels quite nicely if things are smudgy, blurry. Come across here. I'm just going to zhoosh a bit of black in through there because it is quite dark through that area there. And then just dab it softly. So just be mindful of where you're putting it and be careful. Just go softly and gently. Keep referring back to your picture. That's where you're going to get the info that you need about where to put your marks. Okay, so I'm still using black, but I'm dabbing it and softening it so it's not very dark. The darkest area is under the eye, so that rim down here under the eye. And then the lashes, when I put those in, hopefully, I'll be the darkest. And then we'll put a bit of light in the eyeball, which will give it some reflection soon. First, on the eyelid, see it's quite light on the eyelid, but on the right side of it, there's a little crease. So I'm using the blue violet there just to get that little bit of a shadow on that side there, and then I'll soften it off like that. And then I can come back again with my light blue and lighten that up just a tad, just a teeny weeny bit, something like that. So it's starting to come together. Dabbing, dabbing. Don't push it round too much and blend it because you'll lose the vibrancy and you'll start to make mud and it'll all just get mushed in together. And then you'll get really upset and annoyed. I'm just going to put a bit more of the blue here. I keep looking around and noticing contours of things. So I'm picking up a bit more blue and just touching up around here under the eye, because I can see that that's quite light under there. And that's going to help to bring the eye forward and make it look like it's a solid object and not just a flat drawing. While I've got this blue in my hand, it's also got a really nice sharp edge on it. So I'm going to have a crack at getting the glow into that eye. So I can see, I'll see if I can do it. I'll just touch on there. There's a little glow. It's almost a V shape. It comes down here like this. Might be a bit too much, but I can dab it off. Comes down like that, and then it goes across under the lid, just softly. Something like that. It's a bit too much, but when I dab it, hopefully it'll just be soft and really subtle. Not quite there yet. And then it needs to be fuller. And then around the edge of the eye, so the eye rim of the eye also has a slight glow or shine on it. It looks like the eyelid's too low. I'm going to go a bit higher now. You just got to keep checking and checking, making sure that you try a bit of brown in here, because it is actually a brown eye, but I think this brown's a bit too light. Still, I can try it. Not bad actually, because there is reflection in there. So the brown over the black kind of gives it a bit more life. Yeah, I don't mind that. Just dab it softly. So it's a little bit of toing and froing. You'll have to keep kind of touching up where it's lost its darkness. Maybe add in a bit more light if you need to. And just go gently and carefully. Okay, it's not a rush job. And of course, the other option is always pencils. The other awesome pencil to have in your toolbox is a charcoal black pencil. I know you can get black charcoal, and it's very soft, but if you can buy yourself, what's this one? A General's. That's the brand. It's a charcoal. It's extra soft. So this is awesome for getting into these tiny bits to get a really black. It's blacker than the willow charcoal that we usually use. And so you can get in there and you can get a really nice dark mark and have more control over it because it's a pencil. Okay. So if you have a black pencil, by all means, grab that. Just put a few little lashes around the edges here. And then I'm going to use this to put the eyelashes on. So the eyelashes come out like that. I'm just going to do that and make them stick out a bit. That's a bit cute, isn't it? So that eye has come alive just with dabbing a bit of dark here, a bit of dark here, touch of brown in there, a little bit of light. I could probably add a teeny bit more of light. Now you can use a pencil or a pastel. I'll have a crack again with the blue pastel because it's got a nice sharp edge on it. Trouble seeing when it's that small, but something like that looks quite okay. And then I can just softly, it's still a bit strong, so I can just blur it off a little bit with my pencil. I think that works all right. So a charcoal pencil is really good and blacker than your normal charcoal that we use. But don't be afraid to go and grab some of those. They're awesome to have in your kit. So that's my eye. Tipping off my dust. Don't mind how that's looking. I think it's okay. All right, good. Now we've got to look at this shadow around the eye up here. So it still needs to come in darker, down through here. There's shadow down through there on the face. And then on the outside around here, it's lighter. So I'm just going to put some of this orange in here, and then I can go over it with my creamy color and brighten it up a bit. Because that's where the shadow is falling, and that's what's going to make this guy a bit more interesting, is all this beautiful shadow and light. Okay, so I'm just going to smudge some of that in there. Then I can come over it with my cream, because that'll lighten up that colour. Go up here with a bit more light. I'm just sort of touching it on with the cream to pick up the texture in the paper and try to make it look a bit more like fur than a smooth thing. Cool. And then we've got this lovely lumpy bit that we need to keep emphasizing over here, because that's where the light's hitting. And there's light hitting in here as well, and in here. So again, these are like little creases above the eye. Just touching up that eyelid. So see how now we're starting to see where the light's hitting this fella. It's kind of nice, isn't it? I do enjoy putting the lights and darks in. That's when you get the thrills, I reckon. Gonna tip off the dust. And just smudge that in, push that in softly. That's a definite shadow now. You can see the sun's bouncing off there. Fantastico. Let's move over to the ear. So we're going to do the same process that we did the other ear. We've got a bit of blue in there now, and we've got our creamy colour and some brown and whatever else we stuck in there before. So what we need to do is study this ear. So I'm going to grab my charcoal again and just draw a few lines. So we've got the top of the ear that kind of overlaps here. And then we've got little hairs on the edge, little white hairs. And then there's this triangular shape there of dark. And then a couple of other interesting little shapes that kind of sit like that. Then we've got our light bit there. That's bouncing off the ear. And the rest of it is sort of a bluey grey tinge, which is probably what we've got there now. And I'm also going to just give it a little bit of a soft charcoal edge, just to give it a little outline. You can see it's slightly darker around the edges through there. So if I use my charcoal, that'll be nice and soft and easy to manage. And the lid, or not the lid, whatever that is, the fold comes over. So let's grab some blue again and just touch up this fold bit here. Now you can see it pops up a little bit higher than the edge of the ear, just there. So you can do that with your blue. And then just push it in softly, softly. Lovely. I'm going to pop a bit more blue down in here just because I can and I like it. And around there. Beautiful. And then we can put those delicious darks in. I'll just get my blue violet and put my dark in there. And a bit of dark there. And dark through there. So that goes all the way into that corner there. And this one goes up to there. Gorgeous. Okay, so drawing that in, and then I'll tip off my dust. And then pull it out. So softly, softly, just pulling it out to soften off those shadow kind of lines. Okay. And then put a bit of this dark blue in like we did with the last one. A bit of the dark blue over that so that it makes it a little bit darker but not too black. Nice. And then softly just pushing that in. Beautiful. Tip off the dust. Then we can refine this edge a little bit more. So just grabbing that mid blue again and just putting that edge back in where we've blurred over the top of it. Like that. Add a bit more blue in here. Get rid of the line I drew around our shiny bit. Lovely. And then just blending in the blue on the flap of the ear there. Nice, nice. Now we can put our shine on our ear. So looking at my black and white version, I can see this shine is very light. So it's like a half moon here. Just on the edge like that. Gives that little guy a lovely shine. And we'll put a bit of white in here too, just to highlight those shiny bits. My dust. Tidy up that edge a bit. Again, if you have pencils, then a white charcoal or pastel pencil will be quite good there. I'm just going to go over that bit with my charcoal again to tidy up the line. There we go. That's better. Then we can put our little hairs on our ear. So I'm going to use my light blue to do that. I don't want it to be too bright because this is not in the light. This is in the shadow. So it's got to stay blue or light purple or something, but not bright white, because that wouldn't make sense then with the light. I've always got to think about the light. Where's the light coming from? What's in shadow? What isn't? All the things you've got to think about. Okay, so I'm just tidying that up a little bit. So that looks all right. I think that looks pretty good actually. And then we can move down into the neck area. So let me have a look on here in my picture. What we've got, the hair on the neck is sort of an orangey browny colour. And I think we need to put that in first so that then we can get a nice hard line on the neck line between the hair and the neck. So if you grab your orangey terracotta sort of colour and then just start doing these soft little hairy marks. And as we go down, they start off quite narrow at the top there, just under the ear. And then as we get down further, they get a bit bigger. And they come out in little tufts and they have like a little curve at the end. Okay. Now they don't all have to be the same size. I'm going off kilter here. One moment. Just got to clean up my edge a little bit so I know where to go. Yeah. Make sure you've got a nice clean edge. All right, back to where we were. So just bringing out those little hairs like this. Cute, very cute. Once I've done this in the orange, I'm going to throw a bit of brown in there as well, just so it's got a couple of tones, because nothing's ever just one flat colour. especially with fur. There's always a few different colours in there, isn't there? So just doing a few little orangey strands, and then if I get my brown, I can come back in and sort of do similar marks around or on top of those ones. So that just makes it a bit more interesting and gives it a bit more variation in colour. Lovely. So that's nice. Good-o. Then we need to make a nice clean edge down here. So what colour should we do that in? I reckon maybe we'll go with the cream, and then we can put our splotches on. Because it is quite a light sort of skin colour down through here. So just using, where's my ruler? I'm going to cheat. I know it's not a perfectly straight line, but if I try and get a bit of an edge, that might help. There, it's better. Nice sharp edge. And I'm just going to put some cream on here now, so that we've got a nice sort of lighter skin tone to work over the top of. Now, I'm not going to blend that too much. I can see up here around the face is a bit more smooth sort of looking skin, but after that it goes more furry. So I'm just going to try and maybe just smooth off this area and then leave the rest with that nice texture that the papers are giving me. So that it looks like it's got some fur. But up around here and the side of the face as well, we've got a bit of light through there. We touched on that before and we kind of left it. So we need to come back in here now and have a look at the jowls and all those bits and pieces through there that give the giraffe some shape. So I've just put a bit of cream on that. I'll tip off more dust and softly blur some of this in. And this. So it looks a little bit smoother. And then we've got little creases around in here. They're not dark creases, but they're kind of got shadowy brown, maybe brown lines that just indicate all the chins that we get when we're older. I don't know how old this guy is, but maybe they're just born like that. Who knows? Linda knows, she's from South Africa. I've got no idea. Lovely. And what else do we need to do in there? Just need to put some of those brown blotches in, I think. And I need to tidy up under here. I can see some pale blue through here too. I'm going to pop a bit of that in here. Maybe just here there's a bit of pale blue. It's like a grey kind of tinge. And if we pop a bit of it down through here, it'll tie in then with the rest of everything. Now we've got to put our brown spots on. There we go. Nice. Okay, being off dust. Now, is this brown going to be dark enough? Let's see. Put a splotch here. Might be if we put the dark blue in the middle. I'm going to see what that does. because they all seem to have a bit of a darker center to them. And then a browner outline or edge. Don't know about that. I'll have to keep going and make a decision. Might need a darker brown in there. Don't know. Stick with the blue for now and see what happens. But if you feel like you want to try a different color, then go for it. So now we've got to get all the blotches here under the neckline where we've got the creases in. Put a little bit of a dark blotch through there, and there's another one up here. So I'm just using my brown at the moment and going to blotch all the blotches in, and then I'll come back and put my dark centers down through them. Some of these look darker than others, so we'll just see how we go. It's always good to get at least, you know, something down, and then you can work with it, which is what I always do. I'm just looking at all the shapes running down the neck there. These ones are going off to the edge. This big one down the bottom here. They're all different shapes, aren't they? Diamond shapes. Some look more rectangular than anything. Just blotch them on using your brown. Another big one down here. It's a nice big carpet shape. Looks like a carpet. Rounder one there. Don't have to get them all exactly right, I don't think. Just, you know, as long as they're near enough. Nice big long one that sort of goes off the page there, that one. Another one there. I reckon that's enough. Just going to tip off my dust. All right, now I'm going to try the blue in the middle of them. Like I said, I'm not sure this is going to be dark enough, but we'll see what happens. Just going to put some dark blue over these. I like what the blue does. It's kind of a bit nicer than just flat black or brown. Okay, now I'm going to push them in with my finger. Not too bad. I feel like I want to put some of this in to see what happens. This is that beautiful magenta that I used before. That's a bit yummy, isn't it? Oh, that's making a really nice kind of rich purpley colour, which ties in nicely with the horns, or antlers, or whatever they are. Yeah, I'm going to go with that one. If you don't have something like this, then a rich brown would be nice. You could even try a red for fun. Red might be quite nice. This is a really dry, crummy sort of pastel, so it's very, very dusty. Nice. I like it. Dab and dab and dab. Dust. And I reckon we're done. Pretty much done. Could do a bit more shading, probably up under the neck there. Feels like it needs to be a bit darker. Just in here. Just to sort of, keep in line with the shadows that we've got going on. This is blue violet, and I'm just putting a tiny bit of that in here. Yeah, that's a bit better, isn't it? Just makes the face look like it's got some shadow underneath it. Goodie-o. So that, I think, is a pretty groovy looking giraffe. You could potentially run around it now and just, highlight a couple of areas if you feel like you need to add a little bit more light or white. This is when you grab your whites at the end and you think, all right, now where can I put this without putting too much on? Because if you put too much on, it loses its zing, I think. So better to go less is more, as they say. But it really does help to make it look like there's sunshine, I think, don't you? To glow. Just put a bit more here. Yeah, that's better. So thinking about the sun, where's it coming from? Where's it shining from? It's above. So things that are sticking out, like this part here of the nostril, should be catching that sunshine, in theory. Yeah, all right, put the white down, Jamie. Control. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how that's ended up. So I hope everybody else has had a great time. And now I just want to touch up in here a little bit more dark in through the hairs there, just so it ties in. Yeah, that's better with the spots and the colours we've used there. This is blue violet. I'm just putting a bit of dark through that. That looks better. All right, I'm going to flip over to see everybody's faces now. And if you're watching this video, I hope you've enjoyed it. Please head to my website. If you're looking for more videos, there's heaps there. I'm just going to uncover my website so you can see it, because I've written it on this board. There it is, deliciousart.com.au. So that's where you'll find lots and lots of other video classes just like this one. And they're $15 each. They never expire, so you can watch them as often as you want to, and stop and rewind and pause and do all the things. So they're really good value for money, and there's a lot there suitable for beginners and intermediates. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.